Hey, how are you doing? Today we are going to look into checking the file type that we uploaded using Multer. Multer has a problem in the latest version that's available through the app install in Linux at least. And when you use npm install, the application version that installs is 1.43. Probably because the 2.0 hasn't been released due to some issues that I am not aware of, but we are still stuck with the 1.4.3. And the problem we have with that Multer version is that it doesn't really check the file type. So when you read the file type with Multer, the MIME type that it reports, it's really extracted only from the extension of the file, not from the actual MIME type of the file. So you need to check that with Multer. So my first advice to you is when you upload these files to your server, don't add an extension. Even if the extension of the original file was JPG or JPEG or whatever it is, don't add that extension. Just come here and where we define, remember, under the mult disk storage, don't add the JPEG. Just leave it as it is with the file name that we created. In this particular case, it will be file.fieldname plus date.now. What is the advantage of that? That when you come with an HTML tag like image, img, and you read the file, when you look at the source, you don't need to know whether the file, the image that you're going to read is a PNG or a JPEG or a TIFF or GIF or whatever. You just read it by the file name with no extension. And then the browser is going to use the MIME type of the file itself to actually interpret how to display it. So you don't need to worry about the extension. It's not being used by the browser, so you don't need it. It will only create trouble for you, because if you think it is a JPEG and you try to open a JPEG, but it is a JPG, you will get a file not found error, which is not what you want. So just use the file name, don't deal with the extension, and that will simplify your life. Now, another thing I want to show you is the way we did the reading with Multer before. If you look at our statement here, we looked at upload files and upload.array because we were reading multiple files and we were defining the fields to be a maximum of 12. The request response was sent to an arrow function that all we were really doing was to console logging the information and then sending a response. But we don't need to do that. The way to do that is, rather than going to this arrow function, we just can call another function that's going to be called in the chain by node. So basically we remove this, okay, and here we say, for instance, like we say on the explanation here, let me show you, this is going to be available in the description of the video, all this text. We use upload files as a function, okay? So we come back here, and here we do colon upload underscore files. And this is going to invoke the function upload files, and it's going to pass to that function the request and the response. So we can go to the beginning of the code here, and we can start writing our upload function. Let's come after we do this. We define the app, we define the constant upload, and here we say a constant upload files equal, and here we get our arrow function, request.response. And in our arrow function, let me get the arrow in place. In the arrow function, we define what's going to happen during the upload of the files. For that, I have the upload function also in the description of the video. Here it is in full color here, but it's not going to be in color in the description. But anyway, this is the upload function that we are going to be using. The first thing we need to do is we need to import a couple of packages to give some more superpowers to our application, and of course install those packages with npm. So we are going to import file type, okay, file type from file, and I'm extracting this piece of the module, okay, using ES5 from file type. That is the whole package. So I don't need to import the whole package, I just need to import the file type from file function from the package. Also, I need to import a couple of file system operations that I'm going to be using. One of them is unlink, that will be equivalent to the delete. And the other one is rename, that is self-explanatory, from fs/promises. So I don't need to import the whole package, just these two functions that I'm going to be using from that package. The first thing we need to do in our upload function that we have around here, okay, let's open it. And the first thing we need to do is remember that in our request.files that our Multer is going to provide to us, our Multer package is going to provide to us, we have a bunch of files. It's an array, so we need to map this array, okay? The map function is going to provide us access to each file that's inside that array. For that, we are going to use an asynchronous function, and we are going to use the fact that map is going to provide to us each element of the array, meaning each file, and we are going to apply the following transformation to that file inside the map function. We are going to create an arrow function, okay, that's going to try to do a few things. The first thing it's going to try to do, we are going to use try and catch to catch errors, is we are going to define a response, constant response, and we are going to make that equal to a wait, because it is an asynchronous function, file type from file. That is the function that we imported above. Remember here we did the import, okay, file type from file. What file are we going to be analyzing? Okay, the same file we just imported, and for that we have in that array, we extracted the file using map, and each file is going to have a property called path that's going to tell us the path to that file, okay? We provide that path to the file type from file function, okay? And we are, okay, sorry. We need to close the parentheses. I already closed it, but it went to the other line, okay. So file.path, and we terminate the line. Oops, I have something wrong here. Oh, because I started the try, but I didn't close it with a catch. So we are going to do a try catch. All this is going to be in the notes, in the description of the video that you can see is on the right-hand side, okay? So for now, I'm jumping to the most important parts, but here is how it's going to look when it's completed, and I'm going to explain each part of it. So don't worry, we are going to be building it slowly. So for now, we are going to just try to catch the error, and we are going to say catch error. And if we catch an error, meaning the try jumps to, it fails for some reason, we are going to catch this error here, and we are going to console log. So we are going to say console.log. Sorry, viewer, we got an error. And we are going to report the error. So very simple. And this is for now what we are going to be doing with this, okay? We should not forget at the end to send a response, because otherwise the system is going to, the client is going to wait for a response. So here we need to do response.status 200, because we found everything, .send, and here we say received, and we add to this response and request.files.length, that is the number of files that we received, and we say what? Files. So we received so many files, and that's basically the response we send to the client. So now we have the information from the file type from file, and we can compare that with the Multer MIME type to see whether they agree, and then take some action based on whether they agree or not. So if we do that using the if statement, we say if response.mime coincides with file.mime type. Remember that we are extracting this file with the map. If that is the case, and let's say that we also accept the JPEGs only, and then we can say and the response.mime is coincident with image JPEG, okay? If both of these things happen, then we may do nothing because we got the right file type and there's no disagreement. But if one of them doesn't happen, okay, so we can send a message to the console.log. We got the, or we can say everything looks good with the file receipt. Okay, now let's say that we didn't get that we failed. For instance, we can say else if, and now let's check on the if condition. We say response.mime is different than file.mime type. So basically it didn't agree. We got one MIME type with our check and another MIME type with Multer. So in that case, what we can do is just report it to the console.log, and say MIME type by Multer was, and report it. Sería file.mime type and MIME type from file type is what we are using. Remember, here we have the library file type and MIME type from file type was, and here we do response.mime. Okay, so we basically report both of them. And let's say that we want to take a more drastic action. For instance, when these two don't agree, we want to just delete the file. So we need to go and call unlink to do that. So now we are going to delete the file as an action, so a drastic action, and we are going to do try, okay, and catch. So we come here and we do catch error. Okay, and in the try we are going to do await unlink, and we are going to do file.path, and this is all going to be in the descriptions in detail. And in that case we are going to report to the console and say console.log successfully deleted file at, and here we are going to write file.path. Okay, and if there is an error, we are going to report it to the console, or you can take any other actions that you want depending on how you want to handle your errors. Then delete failed for file.path. Okay, so there's a multitude of ways for you to handle your errors. This is just one very simple way for demonstration. That is one action that we can take. Another action that you can take that is illustrated in the description of the video, but I'm going to incorporate it here, is you can just rename your file. For instance, rather than deleting, you could actually rename the file. So let's move the unlink, and here we are going to say rename, and for that we need to provide a new name. So we have the original file path, and then we say to, I don't know, bad file to check, and we can actually add here plus new date. Okay, so that we combine this basis with this basis for the new name. And in that case, what we are doing is we are renaming the file and giving it a new name to handle the bad file situation. Let's now change the console log from successfully deleted file to successfully renamed file or something like that. And here delete failed, rename failed in the error. Okay. And here we can say, no, because it won't be the new name, the date would have changed. We don't need to do that, otherwise you need to create a variable and then use that variable as a new name. Okay, we can do that. Let's do here and say constant new name equal and bad file to check, and we can begin this with the old bad file path and say file.path plus bad file to check plus new date, and now we can say here rather than file path, we can write down here new name. Okay, and in that way we will be stating renaming to the new name. That will be a completely new configuration and will be marked with a bad file, so we know which files we have identified as bad files. That's one way to handle that. How do you handle this? That will depend on your particular situation. Okay, and here we can say console log rename file at space to file name, and here we can just write name. New name. Let's consider now the case where the response.mime, meaning the MIME type coming from file type from file check, coincides with the file.mime type, but our file is not a JPEG file. So in that case, we can come here and do this should not be handled here. This case should never happen. So we should see here we should say else if dot mime coincident different than image.jpg. If that is the case, we should alert the user that console.log that this should not be happening. This should not be happening. Something is wrong. Why shouldn't it be happening? Because what happens if the MIME type detected by file type from file coincides with the file type we detect with a file check, then it should have been caught when we downloaded the file. So when we are downloading the file, that is in the array here, when we are actually doing the upload array, okay, and we are downloading the file with Multer, we should not download files that are not the correct MIME type. We should only allow download files that are the correct MIME type. So this should not be happening. So all very well, but how do we do that? How do we filter with Multer? Okay, very simple. Well, simple once you know it. Now it's going to look like Chinese. But basically, you go to the definition of the upload variable. And here we have the storage, but we need to add another variable that is the file filter. So in the object, we do colon, enter, and here we do file filter, and here we are going to have again the request, the file, and a callback function. That callback function is going to trigger an arrow function that we are going to define, and in that arrow function we are going to check if the file.mime type coincides with one of the allowed files, that in our case we said we are going to allow only one, so image/jpeg, then everything is going to be okay because it coincides with what we want it to coincide. So we are going to say, if it coincides with that, we are going to trigger the callback function, and we are going to trigger the callback function with null.true. This is as per the documentation in Multer. This means that it's going to actually save the file. If this is not true, okay, we are going to have an else, and in that case we are going to trigger the callback function with null.false. That means it's not going to save the file, and in that case we are going to report an error, so we're going to say return another call to the callback function, but this time it's going to have an error object with new error, okay, and in this error we are going to see file is not accepted. File type is not accepted. Okay. And in this way we get Multer itself to reject the file types that we don't want. So we should not be getting anything other than a JPEG or a JPG file type or a file extension. But since Multer is going to determine this just with the extension of the file, we are going to further check that with file type. And if they agree, we know it's going to be a JPEG file because that's the only type of file Multer is going to be accepting. And that's the rest of the construct we have above. So now we can move into the testing phase and see how this actually works when we try to upload files to our server using Postman.